Welcome to Debating Net Zero, where we navigate the complex journey towards a sustainable future. Our goal? To challenge conventional thinking and inspire action and thought leadership among executives and strategists around the world. So get ready for an engaging and enlightening conversation hosted by Fulton Company's Mike Ratcliffe and Ralph Mammadov. This is Debating Net Zero, where the future of our planet is in the balance and the strategies of today's businesses are on the line.
Welcome to Debating Net Zero. I'm your host, Michelle Sachar. Today, I'm here with Mike Ratcliffe and Ralph Mammadov. They recently published an article with predictions for the energy sector in 2025, and today we will dive into these trends. Welcome, Mike and Ralph. So let's start with the surging demand for electricity. Mike, what is your take on this trend?
Many thanks, Michelle. In our predictions outlook, we said that electricity will become the world's most critical commodity, and I see that electricity has become the backbone of the world's future energy system. The push towards electrification, especially with the growth of solar and wind, the move to EVs for passenger cars, constantly improving battery systems, and the growing demand for power to power AI data centers are all creating a massive demand for electricity. But it's not just about demand, it's about a complete structural shift in our global energy landscape and away from fossil fuels to renewables. What do you think, Ralph?
Yeah, I agree that demand for electricity is surging worldwide. There's a rapid growth due to the electrification of basically everything globally, in Asia Pacific, in the United States. We're seeing that the demand to power data centers and AI is pushing the growth in demand. It's crucial, though, to manage this transition wisely, both in managing the complexity of electricity sources and in the competition with the other sources of power. We can make power or electricity from fossil fuels, nuclear, hydro, and renewables. So it will be important to watch the space where there's a competition among these sources of electricity. And then integration of AI in managing these complex networks is going to be essential. But we still, I think, have to be very careful and cautious of potential vulnerabilities and ensure that our infrastructure, especially in electricity production and grid resilience, maintains the pace, keeps the pace. This may mean major new opportunities for energy companies and tech companies. We're already seeing partnerships growing between international oil companies and tech companies. We've seen Chevron and Exxon announcing plans that they will be investing in power generation. And what we're also seeing is that the sources of power generation in these investments are natural gas.
Okay, I was just going to say, let's pivot to natural gas, but you made that transition for me. Thanks, Ralph. So, Ralph, maybe you could continue on that path. How do you perceive the role of natural gas, given the current global context?
Well, yeah, natural gas now acts like a temporary solution or gateway solution in the process of energy transition as the world is transitioning from fossil fuels into the renewables. It emits less emissions. It's more efficient in this perspective, from this perspective, compared to diesel or heavy oil. But it's really important to acknowledge the risk of becoming over-reliant on natural gas for a longer period of time. We all have to acknowledge that this role is transitional, and our ultimate goal, the ultimate goal of the global economy, should be moving towards completely renewable sources as soon as this is technologically and commercially feasible. Having said that, with a potential issue of having sufficient sources of electricity, there are now talks about, reviving coal plants in major economies like Germany and the United States. So there is a vulnerability in respect to the resilience of the production. Some of these coal plants have been shut down due to their carbon intensity before. Some of them were scheduled to be shut down, but what we see now in the countries like Germany, that the government, the state is considering reopening these coal plants. So this process, this transition will not be easy, and it's one of the areas I think one of the trends that we should watch.
True, but I really go back to what you actually said at the beginning of that, was that it's a transitional fuel. LNG is not going to be the long-term solution, and there are really implications to that. And I think we really need to think through what those implications are, as it tries to, as it clearly can be a replacement for diesel and fuel. But what it means in the longer term is that pushing out the ability to go and get to true zero emissions. It's actually really interesting. Shell has been pushing LNG as a future fuel quite heavily in the past 2 years. And one of the things that it certainly is doing is selling a lot about is in deep sea shipping. And then the Chinese are also selling LNG powered trucks. We see certain bits of the marketplace clearly moving towards LNG. The big engine manufacturers have all got LNG engines nowadays. So the ability to go and move the market to LNG is certainly there. But when you go and shift particular transport markets to LNG, clearly is going to have a long-term implication, because those pieces of equipment are going to be around for another 20 years. That's going to go and push out the ability to go and get to true zero emissions. And I think that we really need to recognize that. It's actually really a complex market, the place that's evolving. LNG clearly is an opportunity, but you've got to take a look at it regionally, not just globally.
Super, thanks for that. And I actually want to touch upon now, a technology which, just a few years ago was still sort of the technology of the future, and now is really the technology of the today, which is EV technology. Do we still need to be cautious when we talk about investments in EV technology?
Well, I just said we've got to be a bit cautious about LNG because it's not quite as simple as it seems. And I think the same really is the case for EVs. Clearly, we need to go and have not only the infrastructure, we need to go and have the materials to go and support sustainable growth in this sector. So we clearly need to go and have charging stations that are going to be available 24/7, but also raw materials like lithium, which one of the issues today for the West is that that's owned by China. So there are issues in terms of being able to go and have an unsustainable growth in EVs. What do you think, Ralph?
I think one of the challenges for the EVs is the overall value chain, which includes the production of the critical minerals and refining of them. I think major companies, international companies, are also taking notes. We've seen Exxon and Aramco entering this business, investing in lithium production. But this is just one link in the overall value chain. The downstream aspect of it, refining of the critical minerals, 80% of it is still done in China. So it will be interesting to watch how it plays out in overall China-US relationship. But we have to identify the problem. We also, I think, need to push forward with actual deployment of EV technologies. The strategic shifts are necessary, but they shouldn't delay the adoption of cleaner technologies.
Okay, so getting to the cleaner technologies, let's just discuss wind and solar, which are still set to grow significantly. Mike, can these renewable energy sources actually meet our energy demands?
In my opinion, absolutely yes. But like we're actually seeing that as these new energy sources get up to scale, there are cracks that appear that it's not quite as easy to go and link everything together. Let's go and take electricity. Let's go and take solar, for instance. In some areas of the world, there's been a massive growth in domestic solar systems on roof systems. They're being linked to domestic storage systems, and then they're in turn being linked to local grids, which then are regional and can actually become national. And when this supply is all combined with industrial level solar and wind, you start to go and get a combined grid level storage, which has to be added in as well. You're looking at a very, very complex supply chain. And of course, there needs to provide a steady and reliable source of electricity 24/7. And the successful development of this type of complex supply chain needs creativity and innovation and investment. I believe it's going to come, and I believe that it's actually going to totally redefine our energy markets at some, with the local level and the regional level, but it's not going to be without its issues.
Yeah, I think another thing that we have to watch closely is the globalization of the electricity market. You mentioned about interconnectedness of the grids, and this is taking place right now in the pockets in parts of the United States and between the states, in Northwest Europe, between Scandinavia and Northwest Germany. So that's one process that is happening as well. And the solution that you have mentioned, whether it's solar system, roof systems, whether it's industrial level solar or onshore or offshore wind, they will be only part of the solution to this globalization of the electricity. And I think, yes, the renewable sources will be part of the solution, but we also need to keep an eye on the importance of diversity of the energy resources, especially in the light of revival of some of these industries, such as nuclear and geothermal.
Okay, let's talk about nuclear and geothermal. So, Ralph, could these actually challenge the dominance of wind and solar?
Yeah, I mean, the difference between nuclear and geothermal and the renewable sources of electricity is that these industries have been around for quite a long time. They had some ebbs and flows, but now what we're seeing is that both these industries are starting to gain some speed, and some of them are already taking place. We've seen the IOCs, the majors, investing in geothermal startups and in joint ventures. And then in parallel, what we're seeing is the nuclear companies are becoming more active. And as we mentioned in the beginning, in this case, we're seeing nuclear and tech company partnership going on. And one of the areas that these companies are looking into are the small modular reactors, the smaller version of the nuclear reactors. But there's a buzz around this. Everyone is excited, but we see that there are still challenges in adoption of SMRs, and there aren't any commercially feasible operational ones at the moment. And one of the main reasons is, of course, the commercial feasibility of these projects. Yes, they are smaller, so they are less expensive than the normal reactors, but they're still expensive. And there isn't one or two proven commercially feasible technologies that are approved by the regulators as well. So there's a regulatory challenge, there's a economic challenge, there's a commercial challenge, and then there's a technological challenge for the SMR. So everything is not that rosy. Another thing that we're observing is China accounting for almost 90% of the investments in nuclear technology. I think that's one of the things that US and Europe needs to be paying close attention and being doing the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I also see that nuclear and geothermal are going to be part of tomorrow's energy solution. Of course, geothermal is limited to particular places where it can actually work, and it's available. But nuclear, that has a necessity to be able to go and scale up, as you're talking about. SMRs represent the real opportunity, and if those can be scaled up, then you can actually start to go and get the costs down. And as you say, we need to go and do this both in the US and in Europe, and China at the moment is the only country where they're really starting to do this. And so, you've alluded to the issues that nuclear has had in the past, and that really is a problem, because project after project has come in way over budget, it's come in way over late, And so I come back to the fact that really to overcome these historical issues, we've got to go and see investment at scale, both in the US and Europe, to go and really make nuclear work.
Great. So let's actually touch upon this issue of investment or consolidation. I think you had alluded in your article to the consolidation in the energy sector. Mike, let's start with you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think consolidation is inevitable and it's going to be beneficial. It's going to allow for stronger and more capable entities that can go and make significant advances in technology and infrastructure and pushing us further towards a really sustainable energy future. However, consolidation means M&A, mergers and acquisitions, and we know that this is one of the big disrupting factors that brings major uncertainty into the day-to-day world of current players. So expect this is going to be a very, very volatile future energy world. And this is exactly the environment where energy companies should think about building scenarios to help their managers think through the potential future volatility and think through potential plans before these types of disruptions hit them. So this is going to be a very interesting world to go and see whether companies really can get their hands around this and manage this volatility.
Yes, I agree with you. And we have already seen the Seven Sisters consolidate into four, BP, Chevron, Exxon, and Shell. And there's a possibility that there could be more consolidation. There have been rumors of BP being up for sale because of the financial difficulties the company is facing. And we have another process that we have noticed is that majors are moving towards becoming more customer oriented. Especially this is true for Shell and BP and Total. I think from this perspective, the M&As will dominate in retail sector as companies are increasingly eager to incorporate the downstream companies into their value chain to maximize their margins. Another possibility of consolidation or merger and acquisitions are coming from the Middle East. We've observing that this cash-rich national oil companies of the Gulf area, Gulf geography, are increasingly interested in buying out companies in Europe and North America. So there is a possibility that some of these companies may make these strong moves. Of course, it will depend on the macro economy and also especially on the oil prices.
Terrific. Well, thank you both for sharing your perspectives today. It's clear that consolidation is on the horizon. Wind and solar and natural gas, they will all maintain their roles. But the explosion of demand for electricity, which is currently driven primarily by the tech companies, it's going to impact the outlook the most, bringing back a resurgence of technologies such as small nuclear reactors into the fore. We will continue to watch closely as this landscape evolves. Thank you to Ralph and to Mike for their valuable insights, and thank you to our listeners for joining us on Debating Net Zero. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.